Welcome back to a brand new episode of Mic'd Up With Mass. You've traveled far and wide with us, with our expert speakers from all parts of the world. Today, Matias Battola, VP of Strategy at RocketLab, joins Mass Nakul Gaur, Senior Manager for Sales for LatAm region. Welcome, Matias and Nakul, to today's episode. We're all mic'd up, so let's get started.
Hi, Matias. First of all, welcome to this new episode of Mic'd Up with Mass, and a very warm welcome. I hope you and your family, everyone's keeping up well. And let's get started. Why don't we start with a brief introduction about yourself and the work you do at Rocket Lab?
Yeah, sure, Nicole. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me here and for inviting RocketLab to this space. And thank you very much for your production team that has made everything really easy for us to participate. So, as you mentioned, I am Matias Fernandez Battola, and I have been working in the digital marketing ecosystem for 7 years now. I have worked in all the roles related to mobile marketing. I mean, I have my own agency, which was a little one. I worked at Mercado Libre, which is like a big advertiser in Latin America, leading the marketing for Mexico. After that, I've been working at Google, actually building some of the new solutions that have been applied in big advertisers like Mercado Libre, Despegar, many banks and airlines
Great.
in the region. And after that, I received a phone call from Juan Cole, who is the CEO of Rocket Lab. He told me that he was building like a great, one of the best teams of mobile marketing in Latin America, and that he wanted me to join that boat, that rocket. And yeah, I stepped forward and I decided yeah, let's do this. Let's work with one of the most talented teams I have ever worked. So I came to Europe to open Rocket Lab operations here, and after that, I pivoted my role into the VP of Strategy, which is my current role right now at Rocket Lab, where I define corporate strategy and go-to-market strategies for Rocket Lab in the whole world, basically.
That's great and an amazing and interesting introduction from Mercado Libre, which is a giant there in Brazil, in the Latin American region, to Google. And now, you stepped onto the right rocket. I hope you have a great journey here. And for, I've also been, associated and, the GTM, like I was the go to market guy for Mass like 3 years back when we started the Latin American business, the different time zones, and we are across the globe, like like towards the opposite end of the globe. And it was very challenging in the beginning, but yeah, again, it was an amazing experience working and starting off with the Latin American region. And to be honest, not just just saying for the sake because you're here. I've been recently in discussion with a couple of my friends who are based out of Brazil, and they all were mentioning about you guys as the fastest growing company in the region. And I hope fingers crossed, and I wish you and your team a very good luck. Yeah, to begin with, I would love to have the first question ready, and it is Latin America, as Latin America is a market of contrast when it comes to digital adoption and mobile technology. How would you describe the mobile marketing scene in Latin America today? That's an interesting one. I would love to hear.
Sure. Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for your kind words about Rocket. We are super proud of what we're doing. And yeah, we're growing super fast. And this is basically because we have one of the best teams I've ever seen. But really going back to your question, if I have to describe Latin America market, I mean, I think it's right now one of the fastest growing markets perhaps in the world. I mean,
Totally.
we have some really, really big important markets like Brazil and Mexico, which are increasing their mobile adoption really fast. They're both considered mobile first right now. And
Hmm.
for instance, Brazil is now number 4 in the world in terms of app downloads, and is placed number 1 in average time spent in mobile per user in the world. So you can imagine if you
Yes,
consider the
exactly.
size of the population and you consider the usage that mobile phones are that mobile phones have in this kind of region, you can understand the opportunity that the region can provide. But it's not only about Brazil. I mean, most of the people consider Brazil like the start of the region, which it truly is. But also there are like some really interesting markets like Mexico, which has like a really big population and a super interesting metrics related to mobile app as well. I mean, users spend on average 5 hours a day connected to their smartphones, and it's like the second country with the most downloads in the region. So it's kind of really interesting to understand like the size and the importance of these two specific countries inside the Latin American region, you know. But on top of that, I would have to say like Latin America, it's a place where there are kind of some strange behaviors, you know. For instance, like there's a huge share of Android users in the market. Like there's not a big iOS penetration in here, which make things a little bit different than in other countries. And like on top of that, the average like user is not really similar to other regions when considering like uninstall rates or even maybe like engagement with the platform, you know. So you have to really understand how things work down here in order to like make your app succeed and like be the leader, you know, in whatever you're trying to succeed.
Great, great, great. Thanks for being so brief. And yeah, definitely, you know the market. We are in the right hands. Moving on, what do you think, Matthias, that what are the common misconception about mobile, about Latin America mobile users, global companies have?
So yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, I mentioned this recently that I mean there's a different iOS and Android share in here in Latin America than in other regions in the world. I mean that gap usually is hard for marketers around the world to understand, you know, since they are really used to gain volume with I don't know with Apple search ads or stuff like that, which is kind of challenging in the region since you don't get like enough volume or enough growth through like these kind of channels in Latin America. But on top of that, there's a huge, I think, misconception that around education and around like how similar are the countries inside Latin America between each other, you know? First of all, most of the people do not understand that in Latin America, there is a really small part of the population that actually speaks English in a proper way. So for a business to succeed, it's really important to localize your apps and like to actually adapt your creatives to the local language, you know. But on top of that, there is like a bigger challenge that is like, for instance, you have like two main languages in the region. One is Portuguese for Brazil, and you have Spanish for the rest of the countries, which are, I think there are like over 25 countries that speak Spanish in Latin America. And like there are huge differences between like the Spanish of one country to the other. Like most people do not understand that. They think that Spanish is like a common language, but actually if I speak with someone from other country, I might not even understand a word, you know, a single word of what they're saying. Like we have really different ways of communicating. So that's something that companies who want to land here and might need to try to understand and try to assume in order to succeed over here. On top of that, I think that the other couple of things that need to be considered are that here technologies take a little bit longer to land. For instance, if you think about 5G, it was implemented way before in Europe or the US than in Latin American cities. So if you're planning on offering a service or a product that needs those kind of technologies, you need to try to understand and do your research before, because this kind of infrastructure is not ready everywhere. And maybe on top of this, it's just a matter of understanding how the society and the dynamics here work, since the society is composed in a different way than in other parts of the world, you know. We have middle class that is not so big as in other mature countries. We have a lot of low class, low income population, and a small part of the population that is really high class, high income. So this it's a challenge since you don't usually get the same volume of high quality users that are really educated for your product, and you maybe need to start understanding what's the best way to talk to these low classes or to adapt your product, or maybe just understand that you have a ceiling for your product. The good thing about this is that there are still huge opportunities, and the market is really growing a lot. So I mean, even when I say that there are like a huge part of the population that is low class, low income, you still have a huge growth opportunity in the high class or high income part of the society, since like the app economy is just kind of starting in the region. I mean, it has been on for a couple of years, but there's still a huge potential of growth.
Great, great. And when you were mentioning about language, and it's like same here. In India, language is the language gets changed like every 50 or 100 kilometers. And even I faced a similar situation, similar sort of an experience I've had while I was there in Brazil. So I've traveled to Brazil in 2019 in the month of September. I've been there, and everyone was talking about there's a Portuguese and there's Spanish Portuguese, and again Spanish is different. So yeah, language is something that is very similar that what we have in India as well. So that's why we call it like an emerging market, which is like very similar to what is there in Latin America, to on a similar extent here in India as well. So we see a lot of commonalities between the regions here, while we speak on the language part and how the users are evolving from web to an app and becoming more mobile first users. So this is the sort of a similarity that we also see here. And thanks for being so brief. And while we were talking about some consumer behavior, and you spoke about what are the common misconceptions, and the low income, the high income users there in Latin America. So, what do you think? Like, what are some of the interesting consumer behavior and app engagement trends that you've noticed since the pandemic? Like, what has changed? Like after the pandemic, what are the interesting consumer behavior and app engagement trends that you see?
Yeah, sure. So basically, some of the trends that I have seen is that first of all, users are willing to test new things. So as I mentioned before, there's an increasing amount of businesses that are offering their services through apps, and users are more willing to test these new things if they have like the right incentives through free trials, through some promotions, etc. Users are willing to like try to download and test and see if there's something that is more convenient for them. So this kind of testing mindset is like on in some of the countries of Latin America, as I mentioned, in Brazil and Mexico, which also leads to sometimes some users uninstalling your app, since if they're testing new things, there might be some apps that they don't like. But the good part about this is that if they do like your app, you will probably have like really good retention metrics, and users will build habits around it.
Mhm.
On top of that, like as I mentioned before as well, like people are using their phones a lot. Like average usage in Mexico and Brazil like is on top of the charts. Like they're both in the top 5 positions in mobile usage and on average mobile usage in the world. So this is something that is kind of interesting, since sometimes you don't expect to see Latin American countries that high in this kind of charts. I don't know if it's good or bad. Like it's not the place to judge that. Since I don't know if there's a lot of dependency or not in the mobile phone, but that's just the fact and the numbers that fortunately the app any provide to us. But yeah, this kind of metrics like show us how important the mobile ecosystem and the apps have become in our daily lives, as Latin Americans. And the other obvious trend that has impacted a lot in the last couple of years was privacy, user privacy. There were a bunch of regulations like CCPA, GDPR, LGBT in Brazil, and many others that have been maturing in different markets in Latin America that are kind of restricting the way that we're doing marketing. I mean, of course, they're like great for final users, and of course, we should always respect privacy and try to do marketing in a respective and non-invasive way. But these, of course, have changed the way that many marketers access their like their audiences. This, of course, was accelerated by the privacy measures that many private companies such as Apple with ATT or Google are taking in order to kind of give users the choice, about their privacy settings, which is great for the final user. But yeah, I think that those are the main new behaviors that I see like in the Latin American market for now.
All right, got it. That's that was an interesting one, and definitely, people are sticking, with their phones, and the average, user time or a screen time has definitely gone up. Whether it's Brazil, whether it's Argentina or Mexico or any African countries or in India, while people were inside their home, and again the usage would definitely go up. So yeah, with that in mind, Matias, give us an inside view of what could be a good GTM for someone who wants to build a mobile first business in Latin America.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. So, I mean, because of all the things that we mentioned before during this episode, I think that the great GTM strategy would be like doing a combination of hiring local people with actually hiring local partners. You for sure need to understand how to localize your business, your application in a proper way, and you have to work with local people. There's like no other way. I think that this applies to almost any place in the world, since I don't know, as you mentioned, like India has a similar dynamic, and if you think of Europe, you have like also a market really fragmented with different languages, etc. Latin America is not no different. And I think that the best way to succeed in here is to actually hire people with experience in the market, with the right connections, and with great understanding of like the different kind of countries and locations in the market. On top of this, I would have to say that you have to look for like to understand which are the right battles to fight. If you want to test the market in Latin America, I would suggest to go for countries like Mexico and Brazil, which are the biggest ones in terms of population and in terms of opportunity. Mexico, I would say it's a little bit more rich right now in terms of opportunities, since the Brazilian market is really hot right now, and there's a lot of competition. And to be honest, it's a little bit harder in terms of the legal aspects that arise in that country. Everything is a little bit more complicated, which of course it's at the end of the day like a good thing, since the reward is a little bit bigger. But if you want to test the waters in Latin America, I would suggest go to Mexico, maybe Colombia, and try to get your learnings from there and expand after that.
Hmm. That's great. And even I would want to add something here, because you mentioned Mexico and Colombia and Argentina, because the taxation, like the regulation, the law in Brazil is like, the taxes are so heavy to send money outside Brazil, which is around say 40 to 45%. And even and because of this, the new companies who are trying to go deep in the Latin American region always try to step into Brazil, because obviously Brazil is the biggest mobile in terms of mobile spends, and followed by Mexico and Argentina. That's where Mexico is something that every marketer should have as first in the GTM strategy, to avoid the taxation, the law regulation, etc., which is there, which is like super tight in Brazil, right?
Yeah. I mean, in order to succeed in Brazil, my recommendation would be actually partner with a local with a local. If not, you're going to pay like too much taxes, and it would be like almost impossible to survive in there. And you'll have to hire like really good people in order to have an efficient tax planning, over there. Brazil is like really strict in terms of taxation, but actually, I mean, I want to go back to what you mentioned before, which is like countries like Argentina. Particularly, I think that there's a huge opportunity in there, but you need to be really cautious about the economic situation of some of the countries in Latin America and understand if it's the right moment for you to jump in or not. There are countries that are shifting their economies, they're changing governments, and like economy change really fast in a really short period of time. So again, it's not just a matter of saying, okay, like let's go for the big countries in terms of population, or that the countries that have been performing good in the past. You have to truly understand the economics, like month to month of each of the countries, because like return on investment, if you're planning like on investing in any of these countries, your return on investment may vary a lot from month to month in dollars. So that might be something to consider and really important, since like as I mentioned before, the conditions and the regulations might change a lot in a really short period of time.
Yeah, even we also see a lot of, the currency fluctuations keep on happening a lot. Like it's very
That's it.
frequent in Brazil, and that also affects the performance of a particular campaign, because again, we all have payouts to pay, we all have margins to keep, so that the unit economics also gets a little bit, like like we see a lot of frictions happening with the currency being depleted there in Brazil.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it affects the whole economy. The good thing that is that there are cycles. There are some, as it is a super huge market, and you have different countries inside the market. This market, I mean, you have the opportunity to actually have good times in one market, bad times in another market. You have like this distortion in payouts, in budgets. So what you need to do is you need to kind of try to diversify between the different markets in Latin America. Try to understand which are the best to do in each of the months of the year, understanding politics, economies, and understanding how people react to a different business you are promoting. Like you need to understand how elastic is the demand on the apps that you are promoting, and understand if the economic situation of each of the countries allow your payout to be competitive, or if you are overpaying to partners, or to or to technologies in order to get those installs, since the return on investment, depending on the economic situation, might decrease, since people may probably get a lower income than in the previous month. So it's a matter of actually optimizing a lot in order to succeed in this region.
Yeah. I totally second you on this point. While we were talking about, what could be the GTM, and what are the do's, what are the don'ts, and I move on to the next question, which is like, what are some of the unique challenges an app marketer in Latin America faces when acquiring their users, or new users, or users? And how do you, as a growth expert, as you've been in the mobile ecosystem for so long, and how do you as an expert tackle those challenges?
So yeah, basically, I think that the the mobile ecosystem have evolved a lot lately. So we were focused a lot on growth without taking into account any like additional metric, in the past. So the analogy between like how we change lately due to the economic crisis, from like saying that unicorns were cool, and now we're trying to make companies look like camels, companies that are long lasting and have sustainable business models. I think that marketers are kind of doing the same. They're trying to actually get good and deep relationship with their users. So there are like short-term metrics that are not important for marketers anymore. And what they really want to do is they try to build habits around their products, which is great. But sometimes marketers need to understand that those habits that need to be like built around the product, it's not just about the like the media source you are using to acquire those users, you know. It's a constant work and a constant iteration of the product, media marketing mix, and etc. So I think that this is the main challenge that right now is arising in the region, you know, people trying to shift their minds from short-term metrics to long-term metrics and understand how to measure if the user have developed an habit or not around the product. This right now it's a little bit more challenging since, so yeah, as I mentioned before, like there's a huge challenge about measuring this kind of long-term metrics because I don't know, because you know, like the the privacy the privacy regulations and privacy measures that the private companies have been taking are making it increasingly hard for marketers to measure the actual performance and the long-term performance and to measure how users build habits around their products. So this is kind of new challenge and a new era within the mobile marketing ecosystem here for app marketers, that it's on top of everyone's mind. But on top of that, I think that since it's extremely hard to actually have a perfect solution for this, we need to understand as marketers, as growth experts, that a metric, like any metric, is better than nothing, and that we will probably won't be able to get to hit perfection like in the following couple of years until we have a better solution, a better understanding, and a solution that provides actually privacy for users and allow marketers to target correctly and measure in a proper way.
Great, 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 and completely like you had me on the part where you said camel and that analogy of short term to long term. That was like a hilarious one. And
Thank
and I like I just want to add one thing is that which I also face in whether it's LatAm, whether in any market from an app marketer, is that there has to be a change in the mindset, and the change should be that there has to be some sort of dynamic sort of a pricing. Like an app marketer must need to understand the fact that you cannot have similar KPI or a similar like same payout, same KPI for every channel. Like suppose here at Mass we have a social channel, we have a DSP channel, where we have an OEM channel, then again we have a direct app channel. I'm just talking about different channels that, well, like what we have here at Mass. So and a challenge that I also face that while negotiating while in discussion with the app marketers, that they always try to keep a similar I won't say similar, a same sort of a pricing for all the channel, wherein the mindset has to evolve from just a CPI or a CPA, and I don't mind getting users from any channel. I just have my fixed CPI, CPA, and this is my KPI, etc. So this is also a change in mindset, and the evolvedness I also feel is a challenge in terms of while like what we face with an app marketer. I hope like you would also face similar situations.
Yeah, sure. I mean, absolutely. We as growth consultants, we need to make our clients understand that, I mean, if you are looking for users in different places, in different channels, then user may be willing to like engage with your product with different kind of effort, you know. If they're scrolling on social media, they will probably have some free time, so they will probably be willing to actually tend to try new things and to download new apps if maybe the creative is good or the offer is good or whatever. Same thing with search. I mean, if they're like actually looking for proactively for a solution and you show your solution on top of that, I mean, CPAs or will be lower than if you are actually doing display, you know, where you are actually pushing your solution to your to your final user when they're not looking for that, you know. And this applies to the different sources and channels that are out there, you know. And the good thing about this is that, as I mentioned before, you right now have the tools to try to understand which of these channels are good for you, which of the channels allow you to have better ROI, better long-term metrics. Of course, I mentioned metrics might not be perfect because of these privacy regulations that have taken the mobile ecosystem in the last couple of years. But we, of course, as marketers, have the chance and the opportunity to actually optimize across all these different media sources to get the best effective CPI that we can deliver to a particular business, considering all the channels that are available.
Yeah, yep, totally. It's a pain. While we try, like we as a growth marketers, we always have similar situation, and we always share similar sort of experience. So I can totally understand. So again, while we were talking about the challenges, and while you mentioned about you know the entire mobile ecosystem for Brazil and Latin America, to be specific, what do you think? Like, your company obviously helps many apps to chart their growth story. How would you describe the evolution of performance marketing in that region?
Yeah, so I think we tackled this a little bit before. So the evolution has been like changing a lot in the last couple of months, I would say, since the economic crisis. I mean, I don't know if many of your audience is many people of your audience are aware of this, but there has been a shift in the monetary policy in the United States that make many VCs and investors try to rethink or understand the way they were investing their money, which decelerates a little bit the marketing investments of applications on digital ads, on paid marketing, since they try to understand, try to be aware of actually the long-term relationships that the different apps or businesses were developing with their users. Before, we were trying to get as much monthly active users or as much downloads as possible. I think that was a couple of years ago. That was really important, and that showed like a lot of growth, or that at least that was the conception or the misconception back then. And right now we are trying to look at other kind of metrics. We're trying to understand when the users develop habits, when the users set up their applications in order to develop those habits. And we're trying to understand when the users become dormant, which is when the users stop like actually doing that habit or performing the value proposition of your application on the basis that you should use the app. The thing is, habits are not always set up in the same period of time. You can have daily habits, monthly habits, weekly habits, bi-weekly habits. So the shift right now is trying to understand if your product should solve a habit on a daily, monthly, bi-weekly, or whatever time period is. And my recommendation is that the different apps should try to measure their performance based on that, based on if the user has your solution, your app, as a predetermined solution for solving that specific problem or issue that you are trying to solve. So that's the main shift on performance marketing, I would say. And on top of that, of course, we should not forget about the privacy changes that have been like going on in the last couple of years, again, that prevents us to measure everything the way that we were used to, and that make our our work a little bit more difficult, but a little bit more fun as well, since you need to study, read a lot, and try to come up with creative ways of actually solving problems.
So again, thanks for being so brief about the question, Matias. And it's indeed an interesting, insightful answer that you've given. And so now that we are finally on the last leg of the episode, and the last question to you is that finally, what do you think are the next growth frontiers in Latin America?
Sure. So that's a great question. Whenever I say that we are kind of leading or growing a lot in the Latin American market, people always tell me, "Oh, okay, yeah, Brazil is the place to go," and I of course say that yeah, like that's for sure the best market in Latin America in terms of volume and in terms of probably revenue. But I would say that right now Mexico is the right option and the next like growth frontier for companies that are planning on landing in Latin America, since the economic situation, its size, and like the maturity of the market allow apps to develop in a really great ecosystem right now, and there's still a huge opportunity there. It's still a country where there are a lot of people that have not developed these habits that I mentioned before with apps, and you still have a huge opportunity to actually be the one that strikes first and that actually become users like best friend or users predetermined solution for some of the problems on daily, weekly, or monthly basis that we should try to and aim to solve with these apps, you know. So definitely Mexico is the next growth frontier in LatAm, and I would say that Chile and Peru are two other markets that might be hot in the next couple of years.
Yeah, even I would also say that Mexico is like gearing up and is going to be the next Brazil in terms of the mobile ecosystem and the adoption of mobiles, as you've also said earlier, about the increasing mobile adoption and users, and Brazil and Mexico are there in top 5 from the world. So again, yeah, definitely. And thanks for all the answers, Matias. And it was great, and it was insightful, it was interesting. And now we move on to the final round, which is our rapid fire round. And it's always a very interesting round wherein the answers and the question, everything goes rapid here. And I'm super excited to start this round. And just let me know if you're ready.
Sure, just shoot.
Yeah. So let's start. First question: one buzzword that sums up Latin American mobile ecosystem.
Evolving.
Evolving, great. Three trends you think will be big in the region in 2023.
Automation, redefining KPIs based on long-term sustainable growth, and how privacy will affect measurement.
Great. One ad tech buzzword you've heard enough of.
Privacy sandbox, I would say.
Okay. What makes you remain growth focused?
I think what makes me remain growth focused is like actually helping people to achieve their goals through digital marketing. I always think that at the end of the day, we are helping businesses, families, and people to fulfill their destinies through just showing ads, you know, which is kind of simplifying this thing. But yeah, that's actually what drives me, like helping people to actually achieve their goals.
Yeah, that's a kind heart one. Again, next one. Which one daily habit has been a game changer for you?
I would say meditating.
Okay. I think I should also start doing that. And the next one: define Matias Battola in one word.
Curious, I would say.
Great, great, great. And while we move on to the last segment, thank you, Matias, for joining us today. Before you leave us, any final thoughts for our listeners?
I mean, in terms of final thoughts, I would say that Latin America, it's a great market right now. It's super hot, super trendy. Everyone wants to take a piece of this pie, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity for everyone who is trying to actually land their apps here. So don't be fearful of actually taking the leap. As I mentioned before, hire the right partners or local people. They will understand how to deal with the go-to-market strategies correctly. And yeah, just good luck to everyone that it's planning to expand their businesses over here.
Great, great, great. And again, thanks a lot for your time. And it was great having you here. And I'm sure this episode is going to be a big one. And the listeners would find it very much insightful and interesting. And again, see you next time.
Thank you very much, Nakul, and thank you again for inviting us and for giving Rocket Lab the space of actually sharing their insights and their knowledge. Again, it was a pleasure talking to you, and I hope we can do this again another time.
Definitely, Matias, definitely.
All right, then. Thank you, Matias and Nakul, for joining us today for an insightful conversation full of new learnings. You rightly said that Latin America is a market of contrasts, and it's interesting to see how that impacts app marketers. Also, interesting to hear how the countries have evolved, as well as how mindsets have evolved for advertisers. On that note, that's it on the episode of Mic'd Up with Mars. I'm sure our listeners will have plenty to take away from our podcast today. Signing off. Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you very much.